Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan salam sehat bagi kita semua. Aloha from paradise. And Sampurasun. I always open my public address anywhere in the world with Sampurasun. It is a part of a useful local wisdom I inherited from the community where I was born 72 years ago in a city called Bogor in the West Java province of Indonesia. It simply means I ask for permission to talk to you all. And I also ask for forgiveness if what I say is inappropriate or incorrect. The audience are expected to reply with rampes. Yes, rampes, meaning apologies accepted. So, if I talk nonsense today, I'm already forgiven, correct? Good afternoon, The Excellency Bapak Johnny Plate, the Minister of Information and Communication, the Chair of the LLDT, Professor Agus, the Rector of the University of PancaSila, Professor Edi Tut Hendratno, also the Dean of the Psychology Faculty, Dr. Silverius Suharso, distinguished speakers, and esteemed participants. It gives me a great pleasure to participate in this important and timely national scientific meeting organized by the Universitas PancaSila in Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm honored and grateful to be invited personally by Pak Sony Suharso, the Dean of the Faculty of Psychology of the University of PancaSila, to be a speaker at this meeting. I also want to pay tribute to the organizing committee chaired by the capable Ibu Aisyah and her team for the hard work and detailed preparations in planning and implementing this meeting. So, why are we meeting here and now? Is it in order for us to survive the new normal era on Earth? Can we survive? To me, the years 2020 and 2021 are the years of the perfect storm. And this questions our common future. No wonder Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and Jeff Bezos, after creating major disruption on Earth, are now pathfinding and trailblazing to explore life on Mars. So, what are we doing here? We are facing problems. In the midst of an already disruptive decade of 2010, we enter the new decade of 2020. And what do we find? The chaos of digital technology and COVID-19 pandemic dictating and altering our life, attitude, and behavior. Globally, mankind and institutions are forced to change their behavior and operations almost overnight. It is not an evolutionary change. It is a revolutionary alteration of human behavior in many ways, especially in education and communication, to ensure health, safety, and life survival. For more than 1.5 years and continuing, people are disturbed not only by digital technology revolution, they witness so much miseries, illness, and untimely deaths due to COVID-19. They undergo significant disruptions in their own daily lifestyles, social interactions, and behavior. Many have sacrificed their career and lost their jobs. Students' education process is disrupted and it is questionable in its effective operations, quality, and competence outcomes. Not to mention the macroeconomic and social impacts at the national level and context. For this meeting, I will only focus on few of the impacts affecting education and communication processes, which may have some psychological implication and challenges. As I am a storyteller, my education method is not to give solutions, but only to raise relevant issues and to suggest what to think about. My presentation will give some keywords or tech words which you will need to Google it yourself for more elaboration because I cannot explain everything in detail in this presentation of about an hour or so. Solutions must be developed according to specific context, specific needs, and based on the cultural wisdom in the area where the problem needs to be solved and by those who are most concerned with. The video presentation and also the PowerPoint materials that I will use towards the end of my presentation will all be available in my Dropbox. I will show and give you the link later for you to review at your own time and also to download. During this presentation, I will only focus on three main issues that I want you to think about. And here they are. The first issue, digital technology meets COVID-19. Basically, what I want to say is virtual behavior is here to stay. And we'll talk about the challenges because of the inadequate educational support, creating increased responsibility to parents and students, in addition to the formal education support that they will get from the educational authorities. But certainly, there must be some changes in the way they learn and the way they behave and in the way they conduct their lifestyles at home. The second issue that I need to discuss and share with you is the artificial intelligence meeting netizens. And this is a case where we are all programmed to be addicted. And here I'm going to talk about challenges about the effects on personalized communication and social behavior. And there are a lot of psychological implications in that. And the third, we're going to talk about disruption era careers and the digital divide. And this creates generational conflicts. And the challenges is because there are this incompatible perception and expectation that creates problems between parents and children. And therefore, there are this incompatible perception and expectation among parents versus their children's aspiration and behavior. In addition to that, I'm going also to discuss three main concepts that will be closely related to the issues I talked about just now. So the three main concepts are the following. The one related to social psychology is what we're going to discuss is the inoculation theory and the work by William McGuire. The second concept that also is related to social psychology is a new concept, a new theory developed by my alma mater at Stanford by Professor B.J. Bok, and he called it captology. And this is an interesting phenomenon, a new development where we talk about the relationship between persuasion, psychology, and its interface with computer technology and computer programming. And finally, the third concept that we're going to talk about is again fairly new, and this has to do with educational psychology, and I call it perception AI or artificial intelligence that is related to deep learning, machine learning. And I'm going to use the case that is advocated by Kai-Fu Lee, who is now in Silicon Valley, in China, and many parts of the world are being studied carefully because he has come up with very interesting and yet controversial assertions. Okay? Okay, let's start with the first main issue that we need to think about. And that is digital technology meets COVID-19. Virtual behavior is here to stay. For more than 50 years, people like me and many others globally have advocated and promoted with very little success the application of communicating technologies and strategies for massive distance learning, but not very successful, as I said earlier. Lack of competency in distance learning management, and more importantly, the psychological resistance are the main constraints for wide scale use of distance learning technologies and strategies, especially for education. Never before in history has the rate of the diffusion of innovation and technology adoption been faster than today in the use of virtual and digital technology tools for education and communication. The slow process of adoption of such technology in the last 50 years were transformed almost overnight, mainly due to the COVID-19. For instance, Zoom users increased in just 3 months, January to April 2020, from 20 million to 300 million users globally, used not only by educators, but by the public at large. The number of Zoom users today is obviously even much higher. Cisco also reported a total of 300 million WebEx users, and it saw sign-ups to about 240,000 users in just 24-hour period. Imagine how widespread the use of virtual communication these days are. So, what are some of the implications of such a revolutionary change to virtual education and communication? The first thing is the problem of inadequate educational support. And because of this, parents and students will need to have an increased responsibility in their own educational process. In addition of whatever the formal education system could provide them with. Due to the overnight imperative of switching to virtual education, most institutions, educators, and their curriculum are not ready. Many are not offering suitable, effective, and efficient remote learning strategies and methods. And this provides very difficult problems for both the educators as well as parents and students because the quality of education is at stake. Another problem is virtual communication and educational technologies may not be accessible to all learners because there may be unequal availability or quality of infrastructure facilities, such as internet connectivity, the equipment needed for learning, such as mobile devices, laptops, etc., because of socioeconomic constraints, as well as the incompetency of the support systems. And here, of course, parents again will need to rescue a situation like this in order to support their children's education at home. And this has been going on since early last year, 2020, and continuing, I don't know until when. Larger and more well-endowed educational institutions, however, may be able to weather and manage the economic and financial pressures better than smaller institutions. The larger and more established learning organizations may transform better and adjust easier due to the changing modalities to virtual education and the inefficiencies of underutilized assets. However, the above situation will widen the digital gap between educators and learners and among education institutions and their learners. So, based on what I've said earlier, here are some of the challenges. Virtual communication behavior in digital technology application through mobile devices especially will be here to stay even post COVID-19 era. And therefore, ensuring readiness and the fundamental ability of society, especially parents and educators, of their digital literacy and technological application skills in the effective use of mobile and computer devices will be of highest priority. Parents will need to adjust their professional and personal activities and lifestyles, and of course, their time schedule to accommodate the new task of increased participation in their children's education. More importantly, they need to master the relevant pedagogical methods in educational psychology, including time management, stress management, and learning assessment management. Educators need also to reform their learning curricula, their virtual and hybrid learning methods based on the new psychology of mediated collaborative education and synchronous and asynchronous virtual communication. And this should have been done a couple of years back because the younger generation have a different habit of communication and education and learning than the previous generations. Because of all that, education policymakers, decision makers, and administrators should creatively and efficiently transform the underutilized education facilities and infrastructure due to the hybrid or virtual education modalities into more monetizable ventures. So it is not only curriculum reform or curriculum adjustment that is needed, but also transforming the educational facilities, making it more efficient. Because of such reforms in terms of increasing the cost effectiveness, cost efficiency of the facilities, of the infrastructure, of the school and educational system, hopefully revenues can be generated or saved, and it should be used to cross-subsidize resource-poor families and students with needed communication technology tools to narrow the digital technology gap among students and the different economic status, as I mentioned earlier. And hopefully, because of that, there can also be a better and more efficient operation and financial management, resulting in the cost of education becoming cheaper for all. The question is, how can such competency be offered and by whom? All right, let's now discuss the second main issues to consider. Artificial intelligence meets netizens, people who using the internet, and almost all nowadays. And this is the case where we are all programmed to be addicted. There is a proliferation of mobile devices, as you know, especially smartphones and their abundant apps or applications, mobile applications. We call it apps. Most people are now glued to their phones for any conceivable task, including entertainment, leisure, and fun. This phenomenon becomes perpetuated, especially during the COVID pandemic, as there are more free time to spend, but nothing much to do except staring and checking your phone and mobile devices. Over the years, especially during the pandemic, most netizens are dependent on their mobile devices, especially children who are isolated from their physical and social interactions with their friends. So we now see a new problem, not of people obesity, but something more dangerous, and that is infobesity. Many of us are now suffering from IAD. And what is that? Internet addiction disorder. Now, in addition of all that, we are facing another big issue or constraints. Due to the democratization of communication and education, everyone can generate and distribute information on any subject to anywhere around the world. Various communication methods and information packaging using artificial intelligence based algorithm can now develop for viral distribution through multiple platforms. Consequently, we have an infodemic, which is often misused for hoax, fake, and hate information, and also other vested interested disinformation and misinformation activities. Such communication can create stress, conflict, fears, uncertainties, anxieties, and other mental disorder. What are some of the implications of such a revolutionary change in such a dependency on mobile devices and non-personalized communication? So, in my opinion, here are some of the effects on personalized communication and social behavior. Due to the present preference for impersonalized mediated communication, fewer personal socialization opportunities may create less social behavior and fewer personal interactions. Communal and group cohesion and solidarity and empathy may also decrease. To properly manage the onslaught of viral infodemic, netizens must be able to critically assess and verify valid and credible information from hoax, fake, and hate, disinformation, and misinformation. Such disinformation can instill false knowledge alter attitude and affect behavioral change based on manipulated facts and corrupted ideas. To increase the problem of the dependency on mobile devices, many people have become worrisome, as for many, the problem is the addiction of children, which are using the smartphones and tablets that is highly contaminated with dopamine and therefore is highly addictive. Many apps have been developed using sophisticated software technologies that produces dopamine stimuli for users, especially children, through the use of games, among other applications. Also, among adults, in the past, we used to check our phones only when there is a ding sound. That means there is a message coming in. But these days, every 5 minutes, you check your phone, whether or not there is a message. You keep on checking and checking, hoping there's something, or you're looking for new information, navigating the internet, Googling something. But you need to have the apps and you are glued to this device without knowing that you are addicted because it produces and gives you the dopamine stimuli. Another consequence of digital technology innovation is the need to accumulate and use data, which many now consider the most valuable asset and capital in the disruption era enterprises. Data and information is now the new oil in the era of disruption and super smart society 5.0, as it is needed for big data analytics and other artificial intelligence or AI based applications. However, such intensive and extensive search and collection of data and information have created many controversies regarding privacy of personal data, information rights, control, and communication regulations. So, based on what I have said so far, here are some of the challenges. Virtual and digital technology application behavior in impersonal communication and social interaction will also be here to stay, even after the COVID-19 period. New user-friendly and economical AI technologies, practical online collaborative and community group networking applications will be needed for increasing social and family communication and communal interactions. Netizens using virtual communication technologies should also be digitally literate and master the competencies of being astute and critical communicators in processing whatever information or communication they receive or they read every day. More importantly, society now should not only get COVID vaccines, but people should also be given communication inoculation to manage and control the infodemic disinformation. To mitigate and minimize the effects of virtual and digital technology communication addiction, netizens, and more importantly, policy and decision makers, legislators, regulators, and educators should be aware of and understand the new psychological concept of captology. Parents will need to be re-educated, not only in educational psychology, mentoring or coaching, and multimedia methods, as their role and responsibility in homeschooling for their children will or has increased. School curricula will need to incorporate parents as their educational beneficiaries and clients. The issues of privacy of data and the danger of cyber and digital crimes have created and changed society's behavior on how to share and protect information and data. Another consequence of digital technology innovation is the need to accumulate and use data, which many now consider it the most valuable assets and capital. As I mentioned earlier, data is the new oil in the disruption era and super smart society 5.0, as it is needed for big data analytics in an AI-based application. However, we need to also be using that information for our convenience. And this lies the compromise between convenience and protecting our personal data. So these are the conflict that may create tension, that may create stress, that needs to be mitigated or resolved. The question is, how can such tacit knowledge and data and information be obtained in a fair and justified manner and shared in order to develop strategies and operation for problem solving programs that benefit everyone and by whom? Now, finally, let me discuss the third main issues that you all should be thinking about. And this is disruption era career and digital divide. And I'm going to discuss about the case of a generational conflict. It may be true that many of the disruptors and young startup entrepreneurs did not reach their goals, especially in becoming unicorn or decacorn. However, some of them have become sources of inspiration and role models for the FANG generation. You know what a FANG generation is? That is the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google generation, the FANG generation of today. Consequently, many of the children, the FANG generation especially, they are digitally literate and they have been exposed to the new opportunities and not more of the same types of career choices needed for the disruption era, which is now or at least for the next 5 to 7 years. However, many parents are not aware of the new career prospects resulting from the technological changes in the last 5, 10 years during the disruption era. And they still persuade their children to pursue studies for safe occupations such as medicine, engineering, accounting, architect, or to work as a civil servant. So what we have here is an incompatible perception and expectations that creates conflict between parents and children. The different perceptions lead to serious and problematic conflicts between children and parents, as I said several times already. Often, the children are tech or technologically savvy and aware of the new emerging needs of the super smart society 5.0, not anymore the 4.0 industrial revolution. In contrast, many of the parents are digitally illiterate and have not been adequately exposed to the changing needs and the types of new professional careers that are needed in the era of disruption, say in the next 5 or 7 years, when their children will enter the workforce. Unfortunately, many parents still impose their insistence and direct or indirect pressures regarding their preferred study program for their children. Consequently, large number of students are not able to develop and maximize their full academic and intellectual potentials based on their own passions, aspiration, and talents. So, what are then some of the challenges of this problematic issue? More effort through public education, briefing sessions should be given to parents regarding the changing marketplace and new career typologies in the next 5 to 7 years for their children. Therefore, educational institutions, schools, and also universities may need to offer special groups and personal counseling sessions for parents especially and children to explore and discuss changes, new demands, and study programs for potential career opportunities in the approaching era of super smart society 5.0. The question is who and how such motivational and futuristic visioning sessions can be conducted to provide motivation and tacit knowledge on changing scenarios and new potential for niche professional career opportunities. Okay? In the next part of my presentation, I will elaborate some important concepts I mentioned thus far as it relates to social psychology and educational psychology using some PowerPoint slide. Okay, we'll go to the next part of my presentation in a minute. Thank you.